Welcome to the 413 Strong podcast, where the intersection of faith, family, and fitness meets. I'm your host, Doug. We are 10 days into 2024. Some of us have begun a cut. Others of us have been cutting for quite some time. Shout out to my guy Sammy here, who's watching live on Instagram. He's lost, I believe mentioned a while back, 75 pounds since we started, which is wild because when I met him, I wouldn't have thought he had 75 pounds to lose. And that's a little lesson right there. He said 75. It's always, when you start, you have a number in mind, like, I just need to lose this, or I'm going to lose this. But a lot of times it is more than you initially think. And that's why the scale is a tool. It's helpful, but you just go until you feel good, you like what you see, and you go from there. But I want to give a shout out to one of my followers, one of my friends, Josh Peterson. Josh just had his first ever baby. It was a baby girl. So congrats to Josh for being a girl dad and joining the Girl Dad Club. Josh, we went to church together. We played some golf together. I watched him play football his senior year. Good guy, so I'm happy for him. And I wanted to share a couple things, because today we're going to talk about the problem with simply a caloric deficit. Is that enough? Is that the answer? Yeah, Sammy said, girl dad for the win. There's another girl dad for us. I feel like there's many accounts where like the words caloric deficit are just used over and over and over. And I want you to understand, I'm coming to you as someone who's been doing this bodybuilding thing for a while. I guess I kind of started picturing myself trying to change my body in the term of muscularity and fat loss at the age of 14. So that means I've been bodybuilding for, 20 years. Okay, a little more. But the point is, I got a lot of experience. I've tried a lot of things. In personal training, I've talked to a lot of people who have tried different things. I've made changes to people's diets and seen what that did for them. And I've also got a performance nutrition certification through Clean Health. And I feel very, very confident in my ability to coach someone through any nutrition obstacle, unless it's, of course, someone that requires nutrition for a medical reason, and that's why registered dietitians exist. But I have to say, it's interesting to watch the trends come and go. And one trend I've seen lately is just like people just spewing caloric deficit online. And a lot of coaches do. I mean, sometimes they'll post a 15-second reel. If you're not losing fat, it's because you're not in a caloric deficit. And I want to tell you, that's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. But sometimes people stop there, and that's my issue. That's my issue. And that's what I want to talk about, because I've got someone who signed up to work with me. It was actually a married couple, and they were both kind of in a similar situation where they told me what they'd been eating, and oh my gosh, they were under eating terribly. And I was like, okay, so this is always a hard sell. It's like, we need to eat more, guys. We need to actually increase how much you're eating. We need to increase your sleep and increase your intensity in exercise. And props to them. I didn't make a super crazy change, but I made some modifications to what they were eating, to their daily schedule, to their bedtime routine, to their diet, to their exercise, most of all. And she lost right at 20 pounds from November 1st to the 1st of January. He lost 24 pounds. And a lot of people would hear me say that and be like, I know what you did, Doug. Caloric deficit. No. I mean, they are in a caloric deficit, but I actually increased the amount of food that they were eating. And that would be very backwards for some people. But it's the truth. I increased how much this couple was eating, and the fat they were burning increased. How can you burn more fat and eat more? And it has to do with your metabolism, guys, and it has to do with how what you're eating makes you feel. And so let me give another quick side story. The first year I was going to compete, I was kind of researching the show from the previous year and seeing who had competed, and it was a natural federation. The show was in Myrtle Beach, and the guy that won it the year before was always posting pictures of him with donuts. And even the day of the show, he had a show day, and he opened a box of donuts, and he was having some before the show. Donuts were a part of his daily diet, and sure enough, he lost fat, he got shredded, he looked great. The next year, when I signed up and showed up at the show, he was not there, and I kind of checked on his profile. I expected him to come back and compete at that show again. He was no longer bodybuilding, and it looked like he kind of fell off the wagon. And that's just one example, but how you eat, it isn't just calories in, calories out. I believe that the food we eat gives your body information. It programs your body. And it obviously is going to affect how you feel. And that's the problem with stopping at caloric deficit. Will a caloric deficit help you lose fat? It'll help you lose weight for sure, unless your metabolism is just really slowed down. And then that's a whole different story, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes there's another medical underlying issue with thyroids or different things where a caloric deficit isn't enough. But 9 times out of 10, a caloric deficit will help you lose weight, yes. Sometimes it helps you lose fat, but this comes down to food quality. Now, and this is a straw man argument, I don't think anybody's saying, I'm only going to eat donuts, but I'm going to eat in a caloric deficit. But what I do see is guys very often, almost bragging about what they can fit into their day. Look what I had. I had these, not just one, 2 Pop-Tarts, both of them. Look what I had. I had, a half box, half a dozen of donuts. I was able to eat this. I had some baked fries, instead of baked potato or whatever. It's like they're always like bragging about what they fit in. And there's just like all these flexible dieting books, and it's like I had this stack of rice cake pancakes with icing, and it looks amazing in the picture, and then you taste it, and it just tastes like plain Greek yogurt with artificial sweetener, and it's not that good, And it's like, let's switch our thinking. What if in phase 1 we are eating in a way that is sustainable, first of all, and it's not restrictive, and we're not putting all these rules out there. It's just like, hey, I'm going to eat in a caloric deficit. I'm going to make sure I get enough protein. And I'm going to make sure I'm eating some things I enjoy so I don't go crazy. And if that means that you get some Taco Bell 3 times a week, but you stay under calories, go for it. I saw Johnny Candido do that once. He's like a power lifter, and he made a really impressive transformation having lots of Taco Bell one month. It can be done, don't get me wrong. If that means that you want a donut to start your day every day, you can go for it. There's a bikini competitor named Sohee Lee, and she famously, and she was one of the first on this, if it fits your macros bandwagon. She had a Snickers bar every day in her contest prep leading up to her getting her pro card. But what she said at the end, and this is where I'm going to flip the script, those last 2 months, I dreaded that Snicker bar because it was so calorically dense and it just didn't give me much energy. Hungry, grab a Snickers, yeah, that lasts for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then you feel a little bit of you feel drained. You feel a crash, and that's where I want to kind of switch. Yeah, Pizza Friday for this week. And that's what I'm about. What I call it is practical dieting. Now, some people will hear me talk about the difference between practical dieting and flexible dieting, where you try to fit in fun foods and say, dude, you just explained the same thing. If you think that, then you didn't listen carefully enough. They're not the same. Here's my thing with practical dieting. Our body is a temple. And so I choose, once you get to a point where you have dieted by following something you can adhere to, that's the most important thing. That's step one. But once you get done with level one, you don't stay at level one. Let's go to level two. Level two is this. I want you to focus, instead of thinking of calories in, calories out, instead of just thinking caloric deficit, I want you to focus on food quality. I want you to remind yourself that your body is a temple. I want you to remind yourself that food is information and food is medicine. And what you put into your body today can affect your lifespan. And it's no longer about what can I get away with. It's about what can I eat to fuel my body. And if we do that during the week, but leave ourselves room for like two, and this is where the practical dieting comes in, 2 practical outings where we go out with family. Maybe it's a birthday thing, maybe it's just a social thing, maybe you're going out to eat with some friends after church and you want some fried chicken at Cracker Barrel on Sunday. Get your fried chicken, man. It's not going to put a dent in your progress if you're only doing that once or twice a week. And you're doing that at times where it's helping, you're being more social. And that's why I call it practical dieting. Whereas flexible dieting, you're just fitting stuff in just for the heck of it, just because you can. And I choose in those moments, like instead of just eating a donut, sitting here working by myself, I would rather have those carbohydrates and those fats come from some overnight oats, like I posted in my reel, with some sugarless dark chocolate. That's what I would rather have. Or I would rather, those carbs and sugars come from the fruit and raw honey in my egg white shake. You know what I mean? That's the difference between practical dieting and flexible dieting. And I believe in that because our body's a temple. And we know that our bodies won't last forever. But what we eat, what we program our bodies with our food, when we treat food like medicine, that can add years to our life. And most importantly, like I mentioned, Sohee Lee was eating the Snickers bar every day in her prep. She talked about how she had an energy crash. She talked about how she wished those carbs and fats could have came from other more nutrient-dense foods instead of something just really palatable like a Snicker bar. When we're doing that, when we're making those, and I'll say it, mature food choices that we know are going to benefit our temples, not just satisfy our taste temporarily. And shoot, I'm the biggest Taco Bell fan, okay? Let me be straight up with you, but listen. When I get that, what is it, number 9 combo chicken quesadilla, by the way, that sucker's $10 for a little quesadilla, 1 soft shell taco, and a drink. I'm hungry after an hour. It's not enough. There's no way that thing is like 1,000 calories. 750 if you get a Baja Blast Zero. There's no way. But it seems like a good idea at the moment, but an hour later, you're hungry again. Whereas if you'd have had chicken, and instead of a white with tortilla with bleached flour in it and all this junk, you'd have had a different carb source like potatoes and maybe some healthy fats instead of the fats from the taco, the Taco Bell sauce, whatever that glorious sauce is in that enchilada. If you'd had some healthy fats like some avocado, you wouldn't have been so hungry after an hour. Food quality over just having something because I can fit it in and because it keeps me in a caloric deficit. So can you eat in a caloric deficit and lose fat? Maybe. If you get your macros right and you are eating enough food quality, you'll definitely lose weight, but most of you don't want to lose weight, you want to lose fat and maintain as much muscle as possible. And when you want to do that, you think differently. You think more maturely. You think of your food as medicine. medicine for your temple. This food is literally giving your body information. Why would I put trash in it just because caloric deficit? Then again, we're all at different places in our journey, and I applaud anybody who has started 2024 in a caloric deficit, and you're just incorporating foods that you like. That way it's sustainable. But I'm talking to the people that have been at this for a minute, and you've seen some results. You want to take it to the next level for your own health and longevity, and just giving you the most amount of energy possible each day. Let's focus more towards food quality and think of our food as medicine. Now, before I end this episode, I've had a couple people ask me, speaking of food and food as medicine, and I posted that full day of eating video today. I've had several people in the gym, on social media, be like, Doug, are you, how's the bulk going? What are you doing right now? Are you cutting? Well, I did a bulk in 2023. It was my first time doing a proper bulk, and I don't like the term bulk. I prefer the term massing phase because a bulk seems sloppy. Most bulks end poorly, but I did a massing phase from February through mid-September, and I gained 25 pounds in that time. Of course, it's not all muscle, but the people who have seen me recently and hadn't seen me since the winter, January or February, all tell me the same thing, that Doug, you've definitely gained muscle. And I went through some things where I think I was just trying to maintain a certain condition. I competed in 2020, and my goal was just to maintain that look, and I did for a while, and I was within striking distance of that look for a while. The one thing I learned is when you just try to maintain for too long and sit still, when you try to sit still, you often roll backwards. And I definitely lost a lot of size in my arms and my shoulders, in my back, just maintaining for a couple years. And some of that could have been a lack of sleep and just different things as I was grinding, growing the club, doing two jobs for a while. But now, if there's one thing I would tell anybody, maintaining is important at times, but it needs to be short and planned. You need to spend most of your time intentionally gaining, and not to the extent I was. This is my first gaining phase since 2015, true gaining phase. So I would recommend anybody, if you're spending for every 2 years, I would say 18 months of that, 20, should be gaining. You should be gaining more than cutting, and definitely more than maintaining. That's one thing I learned, is if you try to sit still and maintain, you do roll backwards. Now that we made it through the end of the year, I've switched to a cut, and I don't know if I'm going to compete this year. In the past, I've always given myself a deadline and pushed to it, and sometimes that gives your body a little bit of a stressed look. Sometimes it means you come into a show kind of flat because you're pushing really hard at the end, and that's happened to me before for sure. And coming in flat sometimes actually makes you look not as lean because you hold water, and it's not a good look. So what I plan on doing is just cutting and taking my time. I don't have a show picked out, and if I get to a point where I like what I see, I'll compete. If I don't, no worries, I won't compete. And that's my, if I don't compete this year, I'll just go back, gain a little bit more, cut back down again next year, and try to compete next year. But it's about enjoying the process. You got to learn to enjoy the process and not get carried away with deadlines and make-believe games and stuff. But yeah, for everybody that asked, that's what's been going on my side of the training, and I'll be keeping you guys up to date. So far, I've dropped 5 pounds since January 1st. Some of that was just a little water from Christmas probably, but that's what's happened so far. So appreciate you guys tuning in to today's episode. I'll be live again with the podcast next Monday, and the 15th, and then I'll be live on Instagram a couple times this week as well. All All right. Hope you all have a good one.